Hey all, here at OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at the Heyplus watch. This is a mid-tier smartwatch that sells for under $100, and the company Heyplus is an ecosystem brand of Xiaomi, along with some of their other ecosystem products, which have included models like the Halo, RS4/LS12 that came out earlier this year and was also a very popular low-cost smartwatch. In fact, they have identical displays, both measuring 1.78 inches, and they're both AMOLED, which makes them quite contrasty. And you're paying a little bit more primarily for some added features, including an always-on display mode. Although it's very damp, it will show a faint time. But a final size comparison would be with the Amazfit GTS4 that we also did a recent review on, and Amazfit is a company that in the early days also received funding from Xiaomi, so they're also kind of an affiliated company of sorts. But the trio of watches that we've seen here, Amazfit is definitely the most expensive, coming in around $200 versus this one again in the middle, $99, and then again $50 for the Halo. So of course, with that pricing, there's no surprise that the Amazfit is the most feature-packed in terms of it's the only variant that has built-in GPS that you can use for navigation. It has offline storage, it has the most robust set of features, and even has a mini app store that is starting to grow in terms of selection of content that you can try out, more sensors, but again, also a pricier watch. So again, despite all three having very similar square designs, they also resemble kind of a low, mid, and high pricing strategy. Before we take a closer look at the design and performance, I will also mention that in the box, which is by the way quite simple, in its presentation just says "Born to Brave." Some specs here include IP68 water resistance, meaning that you can use this when showering, when getting splashed with rain, and it will survive, but you can't really go diving with it. In terms of accessories, we have just a charging adapter, which uses this magnetic system, which will snap onto the back like so, and it takes about an hour and a half to fully charge up. Just like the Halo watch though, because of the lighter operating system, this thing can last for about 7 to 10 days on a full charge, which is excellent battery endurance compared to the Apple Watch or Android Wear devices, since they are running on more advanced operating systems with more powerful internals and apps that you can do on them. Versus this, it's really just a more advanced fitness tracker with a larger display. But regardless, taking a closer look here at the design, again, aside from that AMOLED display, we do have a pretty generous curved glass surface, which is 2.5D and slightly slopes off at the edges, making it a little easier to swipe. And overall, it is a quite elegant looking design, very minimalistic on the front, a slightly larger chin, but not too bad. And the edges here are also constructed out of aluminum alloy, at least halfway. This part is chamfered off, and then the bottom half is constructed out of a polycarbonate plastic, similar to something like the Amazfit Bip or the Xiaomi Mi Bands. And overall, it's a pretty comfortable, lightweight experience, but doesn't feel too cheap. The back here features sensors, which are inclusive of the optical heart rate, SpO2 for blood oxygen, and the charging contacts. Finally, on the edge here, there's just a simple crown key, which is pretty tactile and easy to click. The watch, of course, does have an accelerometer, which can detect if you're flicking up your wrist, and the screen can automatically turn on when needed. Last but not least, the silicone band here, it's pretty simple, but does the trick. It can be easily swapped out for other colors and textures. So now returning to the UI of the watch, swiping down can access your notifications, including emails and social media messages, although you aren't able to reply back to messages because there isn't a microphone on this particular unit. Just glance to see if anything is happening. I can swipe up to access the full list of applications, and there are two ways that the menus can be displayed. The first one here is in that grid-like icon, but I can also go into settings and toggle it into another list view, which is slightly more simple. And this will allow us to see the content labeled out, which might be a little easier to find. Now I can swipe over to the left to access quick launch shortcuts, inclusive of a flashlight mode, which will turn the entire screen white. There is also an ultra power saving mode, which will turn off things like the always-on display mode. It will lower the brightness of the display, turn off the continuous heart rate tracking. There's also a night mode, which will prevent any notifications from coming through. And in terms of brightness levels, you can also tap on this widget to raise or lower the settings accordingly. At the maximum mode that we see here, it is quite bright, and I think on par with the quality that we've seen from Halo and Amazfit's wearables, which is to say, it's very good. You can see it even if there's some sunlight hitting on the display. Now, swiping over to the right side will begin the carousel of other widgets, including accessing a view of how active we've been during the past 24 hours in terms of duration of exercise, calories, and steps. Once more to take a look at our heart rate for the past day. One more here to take a look at your weather status, which it needs to sync with your phone to get the latest information. Once more here to control music that's being played back, so a remote function using Bluetooth. We can also long hold on the main watch face here, which I do like with all the different display settings to change the watch dial or interface. And by default, it gives you about 5 or 6 options that you can cycle between, some which are a little bit more digital, others which are more analog in style and show off kind of the vibrancy of the display. Some of these are even animated in terms of their watch faces, which is not something that you'll find on the aforementioned Halo watches. So again, some slight extras sprinkled onto the software is primarily what you're paying a little bit more here for the Heyplus watch. This one also does look really good, I have to admit, and otherwise, you can, of course, download more options and customize things further by going into the companion app and swipe up to access the full list of apps. From here, you can trigger the SpO2 or blood oxygen monitoring. So this is one mode, just like on the other smartwatches we've seen lately, that isn't done automatically or continuously like the heart rate monitoring, but still is a nice trick to have. During the past day, how much hours we've slept, and it will automatically track sleep at nighttime hours, although nap tracking is a little bit more hit or miss compared to what Amazfit algorithms are doing. So it's all right, and you get a nice idea of at least how many hours in general you've slept there at night. And under workout, you can also find a fair selection of different sports that you can track, mostly such as running, walking, cycling, hiking, elliptical, and it will measure that in a little bit more detail and granularity as you are performing the exercise, counting calories that you've burned, heart rate zone, among other vital stats. Again, the watch itself does not have built-in GPS, which is maybe something I would like them to consider adding in the future, but if you are connected by Bluetooth to your phone and you have your phone in your pocket, you can use your phone's GPS to still record the route. Although it's simple, it works well enough as long as you aren't expecting miracles. Basic stats here, such as, again, heart rate zone mappings, average speed, can be done and tracked really without too many issues. Now, the watch itself does not come with built-in NFC, so rather it's using the watch's display to generate a QR code you can then scan at different counters to create the payment. Still is a neat trick though. Now here we have another mini app which is called Mindfulness that will tell you to relax, breathe in and breathe out with the shape that is generated on the display, and also having some haptic vibrations. Pretty simple app, but nice trick. We also have a built-in alarm clock which will vibrate, and I do like the fact that you're able to set alarms directly on the watch itself, which is not something all of the models deliver. Sometimes they force you to use the app to then set one up. I like that this one can be done on here even if you're further away from your phone, for instance. Now I can also take a look at basic stopwatch and timer controls. Talking a little bit more about the accuracy of the performance, starting with the step count, I would say it's been doing a pretty decent job. In my testing, it hasn't really counted accidental steps, even if you're shaking the watch, which is good. Modes here include if you've been sitting down for too long, it will vibrate as well to remind you to get up and stretch or drink some water, which has also been working quite well in my testing. And in terms of the heart rate tracking as well, this has been doing a pretty decent job, I'd say. Also similar to the accuracy I found on the Amazfit and Halo. I think these days the optical sensors have matured to the extent that there's not a huge difference separating them anymore. It's quite fast to get a measurement, and the beats per minute are often just 1 or 2 off from each other. As a whole, as far as hardware is concerned, I think it is well constructed, lightweight, super comfortable to wear, never was really irritating, and more importantly, again, gets the essentials right. Taking a closer look at the Heyplus app, overall it's simple, but also very quick to sync. You can see that we have the step count as well as calories burned info pretty much instantly paired once we have opened up the app. And in terms of sleep data, we can tap inside to check out slightly more details versus the smaller screen on the watch, along with the sleep score that tells you how you're doing compared with other folks, ranking things like light sleep versus deep sleep, and some recommendations, such as if you want to fall asleep earlier, as well as how you can potentially improve some of those patterns, what areas are a little bit low. You can take a look at your high versus minimum and average resting heart rates. So overall, the UI I think is done quite well, even though of course features are not quite as extensive as what Fitbit or even the Amazfit will deliver. Still, it is again clean looking and will tell you things like how you're doing compared to your recent averages. Again, if you were connected using GPS, you can also check out your map location on the top, but that depends on if you have GPS activated on your phone or not. What types of notifications you want to pass through over to the watch, as well as different alerts, such as if you have sedentary, meaning you've sat down for too long, you can create an alert. One other one that I do like to see here is abnormal heart rate reminder. So if your heart rate exceeds a certain threshold or a minimum, it will also vibrate and give you a notification. Automatic heart rate monitoring during the day, or you can limit it to certain times to further elongate the battery. If you are turning off the continuous heart rate monitoring, for instance, the watch can last actually more than 2 weeks, which is really impressive. You can also switch the order of the carousel of apps and how they're being displayed to reshuffle ones which you commonly access towards the top. And under sports, there's actually more modes that you can pick between. So the watch can only show 10 at a time, which I think is a little bit of a limitation, but you can see a full list on here will include other activities like sports, as well as some of the ball activities, snowboarding, skiing. This can all be found. Now, last but not least, and perhaps most importantly, you can also change your watch face. Some options which are going to be dynamic, so they will animate and dance around. Other ones which are going to be a little bit more still. So here's one called Vital Activity, although it will override one of the existing options that we currently have, since the memory can only hold up to 6 at a time. And there we have it. That astronaut one has been changed, and it even animates a little bit depending on your time of day, which is quite clever. Additional options include album, so you can actually choose up to 10 photos that you can push over from your phone, and it will actually change the photo each time that you wake up the screen, which is also pretty cool. I don't think I've seen that function even on the Amazfit watches. You can even push over an instant video, which is really neat. So you can create a short clip and it will continue to loop, acting as an animation on the watch. One more here will change the photos into a artistic style. So let's choose this beautiful image here from my own gallery. It will now kind of demonstrate that and change it into this artistic vision by applying basically a filter over the image. But you can also use the AI or really machine learning here to tweak it into other common color palettes, including this one called Daydream. We'll shift the artwork to look like that. This one here is also really unique. The smiley icon will also change versus if you're resting. It uses different colors to display a quote-unquote emotion. Further scrolling down, we have what's called the infograph modular watch faces. So on here, again, it's basically showing some more information at a glance. You can choose between other styles, like replacing that panel with the sleep tracking data instead of the weather based on what you commonly want to access. And then under utility, you find some other animation styles. These are going to be a little bit more simple. Here is one inspired by Star Trek, so it will all show off these astronauts in space. Here we have one which is inspired more by artwork and more simple watch faces, classic watch faces. So the further down that we go, these are a little bit more traditional as far as similar to other smartwatches that we've seen, but you do have a lot of these customizations in terms of colors and textures, which is great, and they're categorized quite well and include different genres like nature, planet, artistic, so on and so forth. They all look quite good, but really the first few that you saw there were the most unique. So that is more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the Heyplus watch. And as a whole, I have to say it is a pretty decent option as far as being sub $100, having a gorgeous AMOLED display, pretty good build quality that is comfortable to wear, long battery life, primarily stat tracking like steps, heart rate, and also giving you pretty fun custom wallpapers and an attractive UI to boost. Check out additional details if interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Heyplus watch.